Hello again, and welcome back to the King of the Castle Devlogs. I'm Samuel Partridge, the product lead for Tributary Games, and today I'll be talking about what is essentially the core mechanic of our game, voting. But first, we better start with my customary plea to wishlist our game. It only takes a second, but the warm glow of having done a good deed will last a lifetime. Probably. You can find the link in the description below. Last time, we discussed the two ways the game is played, party game and play on Twitch. But maybe we were getting a bit ahead of ourselves. After all, what exactly is this game all about anyway? Internally, we refer to it as a social strategy storytelling game, but that is a bit of a mouthful, and it doesn't quite get to the core of it. Don't let the game's title fool you. King of the Castle is, believe it or not, a game about democracy. Of course there's a veneer of monarchy over the top, but the monarch in King of the Castle isn't an absolute ruler, at least not until they win. The monarch of KOTC is nominally in charge, but in reality they're held thoroughly in check by their council of nobles, who vote on their decisions and collectively decide on the course of the game. The nobles are where the social part of social strategy storytelling game comes in. Each noble is played by a real person who has joined the monarch's game, and they're playing to win. The working title for King of the Castle was Project Streamocracy. When we first came up with the idea, we weren't even sure if we wanted a monarch to be involved. We wanted to make a game about a flawed democracy, a story-driven game, where players could vote on the outcomes of stories, but where each player's motives were muddied by competing incentives and interplayer rivalry. The theme of monarchy became important in order to encourage players to scheme and strategize selfishly. If we wanted that sort of behaviour from our players, what better framework than to make the main characters a bunch of power-hungry aristocrats in a fantasy council? Shows like Game of Thrones, not to mention real-world history, have primed people to expect intrigue and backstabbing from such situations. Also, we wanted the game to be fundamentally light-hearted, despite the various atrocities it allows you to commit. The Fantasy Kingdom premise is sufficiently distanced from real life that we could hit the exact pitch of dark, but not jet black humour that we were aiming for. So we have a monarch, and a council of nobles who can vote on what they want to happen. That implies a kingdom. How can we represent the impact of all these votes on the realm? Well, the answer is simple. The kingdom has stats, which represent certain things like political stability, the authority and prestige of the monarch, military and economic power, and so on and so on. Each stat ranges from 0 to 10, making them easy to keep track of. The outcomes of votes can increase or decrease these stats, and then stat levels influence which new events are generated for the nobles to in turn vote on. This way, each new vote has a cascade of consequences, as the fabric of the kingdom changes over the monarch's reign. Once we had this framework in place, we decided that the voting situation needed to be complicated further. After all, we didn't want to make a purely collaborative game, where people work together for the good of the kingdom and make numbers go up. Centuries of history have told us that this is hardly realistic, and besides, a good story needs conflict. We wanted our game to have a satirical bent, to portray a world where democracy is compromised by self-interest. But how to achieve that? Well, a healthy dose of pointless tribalism would probably do the trick. But more on that next week.